I think Beck's led in different ways. One of the biggest compliments I can give Beck is he didn't stop running. He was an example to all the players. So for me, the one who in Premier League history I'd have to say is he's the one who could do things which no one else could do. So he asked Fletcher not to charge his phone in his dressing room, which is fine, but then we could be after saying him Roy's taking his phone off charge.
Okay, today we're going to talk about midfielders. Wayne, on one of the previous shows, you talked about Clarence Seedorf as being the best performance you've played against. So we thought we'd try and drill down into the best midfielders that you've played with and talk about their importance. And we're going to talk about different categories and stuff. And I'm wondering if maybe, given the fact that you played in midfield, you might want to name yourself in some of these categories.
I think we should talk about, firstly, what makes a great midfielder?
Yeah, well, it depends, obviously, what you're looking for. You're looking for a midfielder who scores goals, then you're looking at Lampard, early Scholes, Gerrard scored a lot of goals as well, or you're looking for someone who's, going to patrol in front of your back four, whatever. So it depends on what you're looking for, but I think a great midfielder is someone who knits the team together for me.
Also, this depends on if we're talking about when you were playing in midfield. Like, you must have a different appreciation for midfielders when you were playing in a more advanced role or when you dropped into midfield.
Yeah, well, when I dropped into midfield, I preferred to play deeper.
Yeah.
In a deeper role in midfield where, as I said before, in terms of arriving in the penalty box, Lampard was the best, and he was incredible at that. And then people say about Roy Keane, for instance. Roy Keane, I only played with him for 18 months, but people say, like, I hold him midfield. But Roy Keane was a box midfielder. I think he scored 50. He scored his 50th goal when I was there. So he still scored goals, but also his passing in between lines was crisp. It was to the right foot, the detail on it. So, yeah, there's different types of midfielders, and normally the midfielders are the ones who drive the game for you.
Okay, let's break this down into 5 categories because otherwise we could probably talk about so many different ones. Let's start with the engine room.
Ooh. There's a few to choose from who you played
We've
with.
tried to pick some, haven't we? Go on.
Park Ji-sung, Darren Fletcher, Owen Hargreaves, or surprise shout, Jordan Henderson.
Yeah, no, I think, listen, I didn't play with Jordan enough, so obviously if you'd ask someone from Liverpool or, well, probably when he was younger to them, but if you probably ask someone from Liverpool, they can give you a better opinion on Jordan. But when you look at Fletcher and Ji-sung Park, their energy which they give you was incredible and a bit, not underrated, I wouldn't say, because from the teammates, we knew exactly what they were giving us, but they don't obviously get the credit and the headlines, which...
Well, they called him Three Lungs Park, didn't they?
G was incredible. Both of them, G and Fletcher, I remember doing the bleep test, and Fletcher would always finish it, the bleep test and stuff, so they were incredible. But for me, I'd probably say Ji-sung Park for me, and he obviously weren't a centre midfield player, played there now and again, but in terms of what he'd done and, his commitment, you never had to worry. So for the actual 2 centre midfield players who were in there, you knew that he was always tucked in alongside you to make it difficult to have more men behind the ball. So I'd say for me, he was just the one who never stopped.
How much did it help you? Because I suppose that must have just given you the freedom to be able to go off and do the more creative stuff and also not have to worry as much.
Yeah, it's massive. And I think, obviously, I've played out wide as well, and so I know what that is. So you'd always try and run and help back and whatever. But I just think for when you've got players who will work both ways, and G was effective, he scored goals. He, if you look at some of the counter goals we scored, he was involved in quite a few of them as well. So we weren't just a player who'd helped out defensively, he'd always get forward and chip in that way as well. But it just gives you, as an attacking player, it gives you that freedom to know that, when you lose the ball, he's going to be back in there, he's going to be running back. And
was he like that in training as well?
Yeah, do you know what, there was times in training, it happened a few times where you've got the ball and you look up and then you go to move the ball and the ball's gone. And he just come and rob it off you, and you wouldn't even hear him coming. So it was mad. We used to laugh about it. But yeah, I think in terms of someone who you'd want in your team because of what they bring, both from an attacking point of view, but also a defensive point of view, especially in big games. If you look at the big games for Fletcher and Ji-sung Park, they played in most of the big games.
Yeah.
What was he like off the pitch as a lad?
He was quiet, shy, like quiet. There was a threesome of him, Patrick Vierra and Carlos Tevez, which was the weirdest group you'd ever see, and how they how them three communicated. But yeah, no, he was quite quiet and shy, and never wanted attention, never wanted to be didn't speak unless spoken to, but he was like really quiet and a shy lad.
I'd love to know what he made of you.
Yeah, he used to just laugh a lot of the times when we're having banter or messing around. You just see him chuckling in the corner.
What about Owen Hargreaves? What was he like? Because
Owen was very good player. I think he was quicker than what people thought he was. And his issue obviously was he picked up a lot of injuries. But he was important to us when we won the Champions League. We won the Premier League. He's a very important player for us, and for England as well. I think he had some of his better games in the bigger games as well. So yeah, I couldn't say put him in the category of Fletcher and G in terms of if you're saying about an engine room, people who are going to keep going, because he did break down quite a bit with injuries, and if he didn't, then he would have been top player.
I always find it fascinating because I've worked with Owen a lot as a broadcaster, and he is the most chilled out man, isn't he? Like off the pitch, he's the most like polar opposite. So when we talk about him like as a player, I find it really hard. It's like two very different people. Yeah,
no, he was very confident. Owen, he was always confident, and if you'd ask Owen, then he was the best player in the world, and that's what he felt, which is good to feel that way. But he had so much ability. His set pieces was brilliant. His little passes, he'd lay off, his movement at times in the midfield as well. Defensively, he was like a little rash getting to the ball, whatever. But unfortunately, he didn't stay fit long enough.
He was one of those players, though, I feel like, because he kept getting picked for England, and a lot of England fans unfairly used to be like, why is he getting picked? Who is he? And then I think once he came into the Premier League, people saw how good he really can be.
Do you think that fans, and particularly maybe you as a Manchester United fan, I don't know if this position is underrated. And
I don't think any United fan underrates Ji-sung Park. I think any United fan knows how good Ji-sung Park was. But I think probably like the wider football fans don't probably appreciate him as much as United fans did. But I mean, Fergie talks about how important he was. And there was some games where he wished he'd played him instead of other players, because he thinks if he'd have put Ji-sung Park or Messi in one of the finals, it'd have been a different story. But that shows how important he was to him. But yeah, I think all Manchester United fans absolutely loved him, because I think particularly for us fans, all we want to see is a player try. Even if you're not good enough, at least try it, right? But Ji-sung Park would always give 100%, and you'd see him on the field give everything. And we probably can attest to that.
I think with G, what he give you as a team. Remember when you said the manager said he should have put him on Messi? I remember he put him on Pirlo when we played AC Milan, and I think Pirlo's stat was something like he played 90 to 100 passes per game, and like 75 of them were forward passes, and the manager put him on Pirlo, and I think Pirlo had 35 passes in the game.
Wow.
And like 25 of them were backward passes. So you can see he's sacrificed this game just to take Pirlo's game away from him, which then gives us a better chance of winning.
Of course, yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the next category then. The leader. And there's a few we kind of thought of here. You could probably say yourself in this one. You could probably say yourself in a few of them, actually.
I think, for all of these categories.
Steven Gerrard at England, potentially Roy Keane at Manchester United. Who stands out for you?
Yeah, I think certainly Stevie for England and for Liverpool, obviously. You see what a leader he was for Liverpool, became captain at such a young age. Roy hadn't played with enough again to see that, so I couldn't really say. You could see how much of a leader he was, and he was towards the end of his career, so didn't play enough.
But what was he like around the training ground and stuff?
Roy, he was, but you could see he was. And he'd have a go with players, rightly or wrongly. I remember having a go with Fletcher. I felt a bit unfair because Roy done the exact opposite to what he asked Fletcher not to do.
What was that?
So he asked Fletcher not to charge his phone in his dressing room.
What was his reasoning?
No, you shouldn't have your phone in the dressing room, which is fine. But then we could be after saying Roy's taking his phone off charge.
Fair enough.
What did Fletcher say?
No, we laughing, but no, that's Roy. But so yeah, I didn't really play with Roy long enough, but you certainly see how much of a leader that Roy was.
I was going to ask one question. There's always players like Roy Keane that people talk about. Were there elements of people being scared of him in a dressing room, or
I feel
is
like
that just a bit of a myth?
wasn't
I
scared of
know
anyone.
he wasn't, but like, were certain players scared of certain?
There was a few, yeah.
Who was scared of Roy Keane? I
No, I don't know. I don't think I had named
You can't
him, but
reveal that, yeah. But
yeah, no, there was a few, and especially if you're a young lad coming into the team, then there should be that sort of intimidation and that bit of fear with senior players. Of course, there should be, and so yeah, I think Roy had that, and then again that's part of being a captain as well. And then Stevie has mentioned Liverpool.
Who else would you pick
in midfield? And Michael Carrick as well, and though we weren't a captain, but I think just very, very quiet the way he goes about his business day to day in training, how he played the game, and he had moments in his career, Michael, where the manager wouldn't play him for some reason at certain moments of his career. And, but yeah, I think you don't always have to be vocal to be like David Beckham was very similar with England. He was never the most, vocalist, but he led by example on the pitch, and so yeah, I think for them four, Scholes, he was more was quiet, made rash decisions in terms of when he went for tackles and stuff.
That's one way of putting it.
Yeah, but no, for me, I'd probably say Giggsy as well. I forgot about Giggsy. Giggsy was a fantastic leader as well. So, and a lot of these haven't got the armband on or are not captain. So, yeah.
Was there any bits of like leadership that you took from any of these players that you're talking about once you became captain?
Yeah, you try and take bit of everyone. Like Stevie led by example with his actions on the pitch and how he, tried to force the game or drag his team back into a game. Giggsy was more with taking risks, how he used to lead the team in terms of, sometimes the game's tight and, he'd try and play a pass which a lot of players would not try and make. Michael, as I said, just his order on the pitch, his presence on the pitch. He's a big lad, Michael. I don't think people realise how big he is. And
he's taller, isn't he?
Yeah.
When I saw him in a tunnel, I was like, oh, and that kind of gives a bit of intimidation almost.
Yeah,
I think.
He's bigger than what people think. And then just as, his presence in that midfield as well, if you like. So yeah, I think there's a few to choose from.
Did you always know Michael was going to be a manager? You've known him for a long time, known him well.
No, but I didn't think we'd have conversations. I spoke to him before he went in at Middlesbrough, and whether he wanted to go into it or not. And at that time he was unsure because he's a massive family man, Michael, and he wanted to go and enjoy his time with his kids. And I think his kids have got a little bit older now. And then he made that decision, obviously, to go into Middlesbrough, done really well there. And then obviously now he's got the opportunity at Manchester United. So I don't think you do. I'm sure if you asked him about me going into management, or would I have said Tom Cleverley would have gone into management, then you can never see it really.
No, of course, yeah. What about Becks? What was like? I know you said he led by example, but I felt like there was certain games where it was more than leading by example. It was like he just took the game by the scruff of the neck, especially for England.
Yeah, no, I think Becks led in different ways. He had an aura, charisma about him, and how he played the game. And one of the biggest compliments I can give Becks is he didn't stop running. He constantly was saying going back to the engine room before, he didn't stop running. He was an example to all the players. So we get Joe Cole comes into the squad and he's more of a flair player and whatever. He's got no excuse not to run back if Becks is running back.
Yeah.
And doing that, and he's the captain. So Becks had this aura about him, which both on and off the pitch, which I think, but he weren't the most vocal. He didn't speak the most.
Did he not? That's what I was going to ask. What was he like as a speaker?
No, he'd speak, but he wouldn't constantly be, speaking on the pitch the way a Rio or a John Terry would. For instance, he was more quiet and spoke when he felt was the right time.
Do you feel like now maybe these kind of players aren't as prevalent in the modern game? Do you feel like there is a lot more of leading by example in terms of the way you play rather than the leaders that maybe you had in your generation?
I don't know how to put this. I think the game is it's almost like a chess game now. Yeah, it's always been that way, but now there's not really as much playing off the cuff to what it was. So everything is a plan, is everything is, we want it this way and you have to move through the lines this way, and which then everyone has a voice. But if you look at the players I'm speaking about here, I haven't even spoken about Lampard yet. They do things off the cuff. Gerrard, Beckham.
There was a lot more individuality, wasn't
Giggs.
it? Yeah.
and they do things off the cuff, and he had that mindset and mentality to go against what maybe the managers asked you to do, and that's what brings the best out of these players.
So how would you choose a captain now as a manager? Because if you're seeing less of these personalities, you're seeing less people doing stuff.
You'd want someone who the players respond to.
Okay.
So someone who do the players respect, they respond to when they speak.
What do they respond to?
A lot of the time, it's the best player.
Right.
I think if you look at Harry Kane at England, for instance, people will respond to him and listen to what he's got to say because he's the best player. Firstly, I think that's why you see Messi captain, Ronaldo captain. You're seeing the best players become the captain because that brings a lot of what you need to be a captain with it.
So when you went into like managerial jobs, did you take a little bit of time to work out who your leaders and your captain was in that way?
Yeah, you'd see quite quickly. You'd see who's the main characters in the dressing room, and you figure that out. And so when I went in for Plymouth, for instance, Joe Edwards was the captain, and there was talk of Joe Edwards leaving the club, and he was my first phone call I made was to Joe. I could see straight away in how he spoke, and he was confident in how he spoke, and what he thought about the club, and what he thought about the teammates, and then he ended up staying. So sometimes you don't have to change. You don't have to change anything within who your captain is, but then. There's other times you go in and, like, for instance, I changed at Derby County. Curtis Davies was captain, and then the start of the next season, I changed it and put Tom Lawrence captain. Now, that was not because Curtis weren't a good captain. He was a great captain, but I knew that I could get 10% more out of Tom. So that's why I put Tom Lawrence captain. And I spoke with Curtis and said, listen, you don't need the armband to be captain. Curtis played every game that season, played 46 games, didn't miss a minute in that season, but it actually did give us 10% more of Tom Lawrence. So sometimes you make a decision for that situation as well.
But I guess you have to know that the player that you're taking it off, like you had to know that Curtis could handle it.
Yeah, of course.
You don't want to kill him in the process.
Yeah, no, of course, yeah. And Curtis was old enough and, wise enough to know. I explained the reason why I was doing it. And so he knew that was the reason.
It goes back to what you said. I think aura is a really big thing, isn't it? And leaders need to have that aura around them.
Yeah, you do. And I think firstly, you need people to listen to what you're saying and believe in what you're saying. Otherwise, the minute you haven't got that, then you're in trouble. And with all these players I'm talking about, they all had that. They all had that. If they tell you something, they speak, you'd listen. And they've had the experience of being through what they were telling you as well. I think that's, for me, that's what makes the best captain is your teammates are going to listen to you both what you're saying on the pitch or off the pitch.
Let's move on to the brain.
Yeah, there's going to be a few shouts.
I also get the feeling like with the brain, you don't want to miss out anyone, do you? Because you don't want to make out you're saying someone's thick.
No, but we know what we mean by the brain. I think like Paul Scholes immediately comes up as a name when you're talking about like somebody that's got an incredible football brain on the pitch, possibly Michael Carrick.
If you look at all them Scholes, Carrick, Gigggs, very intelligent football players. And I put Lampard in there as well with them four. And Lampard weren't as subtle as them three, I'd say. What I'm saying, but Lampard's intelligence in getting in that penalty area and the timing of when he's making that run into the penalty area to be on the end of things was the best out of any midfield player.
And it was the fact that he would do it like all the time, and all it took was one time for it to pay off. And I think a lot of people never saw the amount of runs he would make into the ball.
Yeah, well, Lamps was, and I'm sure he might tell you this himself. Lamps was a connector. He'd get the ball off a lot of time he'd get off John Terry in that little left hand side. He'd lay it off, and then as the game's moving forward, as the ball be going out wide, players turn the back on Frank because they're going to stay with the ball. And then what he'd do, his timing of his run to make sure he gets in that penalty box. It was never a sprint, but then that last second, he sees that space and he gets in that space. So the intelligence to be able to do that and hold back and then to make that run to get on the end of it was incredible.
And what about Paul Scholes as well then? Because that was the one that stood out to me, and I'm not even a Manchester United fan. What was his football brain like? Just how clever and smart was he to play with alongside as well? Yeah,
Scholes was incredible. And you think when he started his career, you think he was a forward, then a 10, then an 8, then a 6. So he's played through all them positions, and played off the left for England as well. But no, he's played in all them positions, and he was basically a Barcelona player. If you look at the Busquets, Xavi, and Iniesta, he fits into that in terms of, you know, when he's coming to show off the ball, you're thinking, she'll get tight to him, and then you get tight and he lays it off. Then you've got to get back into your shape. Then it happens again, you get tight, he lays it off. Then the one time you don't do it, he gets tight, he gets turned, and then he plays his passes, which everyone knows about.
Yeah.
So he was so clever in terms of when to hold on to the ball or when to lay it off 1 and 2 touch and make it really difficult. Because he was never the quickest. He was sharp, his little movements were sharp, but he was never the quickest, but you just couldn't get anywhere near him.
That's what having a good football brain is, though, isn't it, as well? Knowing he probably knew he wasn't the quickest, so you have to kind of play to your own skills.
Yeah, and again, we're talking about the brain. He was quicker than anyone else up here, and he always, if you look, even when teams pressure in tight areas, he always had time. So he always, you know, he was always looking, he was always seeing where the opponents were, and he always had time on the ball. And that's purely just from understanding when to play one touch or when to hold on to it and get turned. And players like Scholes, Xavi, very similar as well. It's a nightmare to play against because you know you need to get close to them because they can hear you with passing, but you know the minute you get close to you, they're just going to pass it off.
Yeah.
So there's no right and wrong thing to do. You're in trouble either way, whatever decision you make.
I think what you pointed out there, like sometimes their physical capabilities might be lacking or might be on the downward, but because of their football brain, they're able to do more than they should be able to at that age. But I think there was a name that you mentioned, like Ryan Giggs, and I feel like he's probably a prime example of that because for a lot of people, they remember Ryan Giggs as this like marauding winger on the left wing running at pace, and then later on in his career, he was like 39 in central midfield, bossing it against Real Madrid, like, and that takes a football brain as well.
Yeah, it does, and so with Giggs, you know, he's adapted his game massively. He was a flying winger, and then to then adapt, Giggs, he had, you know, one of the best left foot I've seen, and you're right, but people say about his dribbling, but when Giggs gets on the ball and gets time on the ball or just gets turned, Giggsy for me was the one player who every time he gets turned, I'd run.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he was the one where when he gets turned, I'd make him running behind, and Michael Carrick was the one player when he gets the ball and turned, I'd look to get the feet.
Okay.
So you have different connections with different players, and because Giggsy was not afraid to take that risk, mentioned before, to look further in behind to try and penetrate the back line, and he give the ball away. So he give the ball away quite a bit, Giggsy. But that 1 or 2 times he gets you through, then he gets you to one goal.
Okay, let's move on to the complete midfielder. There is definitely going to be some repetition here because we've already been through a few categories. There's a number of names here. We've got Steven Gerrard, Frank Lampard, Roy Keane, who we've already mentioned. There's a few others as well that we were kind of thinking about. What about the likes of like Ross Barkley, Jack Wilshere, Dele Alli, players like that maybe you didn't play with for quite as long?
No, I think Dele was more of a 10. And obviously he hasn't played. He had a 2-3 periods, didn't he, where he played, and he was fantastic. And you're thinking, this lad could go anywhere. And unfortunately, that hasn't been the case. And Ross, I think, was similar in his career, stalled a little bit. And Jack, when he come through, I think he had the game with Barcelona for Arsenal, and again picked up his injuries and never really. I remember speaking to Jack about maybe adapting his game a little bit. And a big part of Jack's game was getting in, driving at people and dribbling past them, but quite a bit he'd overrun and then he'd go into a tackle and then get injured. It's bad playing 1-2 touch, and he did play a bit deeper towards the end with England.
Did he come to you to have that conversation?
No, we were just away with England, so I spoke to him on that. And then, but when you're talking about the complete midfield player, there's 5 really for me in Premier League. 4 I played with, 1 I didn't, and that was Gerrard, Scholes, Carrick, Vieira.
Oh wow!
And Lampard.
Let's talk a bit about Vieira then, because we haven't mentioned him before as well. Just what was he like to play against?
He was horrible. He was big.
That's a compliment, right?
Yeah, no, he was big. He was arms everywhere, the big long legs, and again could get forward and strive forward. And it's so hard to keep up with them when they're doing that. Yeah, I forgot Roy Keane off that as well. So
don't want to get in trouble.
But yes, and he was horrible to play against. I've met him a few times off the pitch, lovely fella. But on the pitch, he was nasty. And
can you remember any specific battles that you had that were particularly horrible?
Well, I never really come against him at that time because I was playing more of a forward or out wide. So it didn't really come up against him head to head, whatever. But you always knew when you do go near him, if I'm closing him down from the opposite side, and you used to love it where he flick it over your head and get it to the side and stuff. So yeah, he was, and then obviously he led Arsenal to them. I think the 2 Premier Leagues he won, was it? And then the others, obviously, we spoke about the other players I mentioned. But for me, the complete midfield player out of all of them it has to be Gerrard.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Was it just like everything you want in a midfield player?
Well, he could do everything. I think he's played the fullback. He's played midfield. He plays the 10. He can tackle. He can shoot. He can dictate the games. He can, hit long passes. You see him in that period with Torres where he's become more the assist man for Torres. So everything you want in a midfield player, I think.
And he was a leader as well, as you mentioned.
Yeah, he had everything as a midfield player. Now, I would have loved to have seen him at Man United, but that would...
Because this is quite controversial. Manchester United and Everton legend picks Liverpool legend as my midfield.
No, I think you have to be respectful and listen, Scholes, or Carrick, in certain things were better than Steven.
What certain things?
So Carrick was he was calmer, he marshal the midfield a little bit better. Scholes with his long range passing and just ability to dictate games was better. But in terms of if you put them all together, I think Steven was the complete midfielder.
We spoke about him in the leadership section of this as well when we were talking about leaders. Have you got any good examples of like at England when you thought, he's a good example, he's a good leader?
There was a game against Poland. I think we need to win to qualify for the Euros or the World Cup. And we were struggling a little bit within the game. And just remember, not by him saying anything, but just driving forward the ball and putting tackles in and lifting not just the players but lifting the crowd. I think that's how he led. He lifted his teammates around him. Whether that's through a tackle or getting the ball and driving with the ball, and that's lift the crowd as well. And yeah, I think in terms of if you want a midfield player who can do everything, he has to be the one you pick.
What are your memories of that game? Because I think you scored in it.
Yeah, I scored in it, and I think we were leading 1-0. And I'm pretty sure I had a headband on because I cut my head, and the ball got crossed in. I've got the head in, the headband fell off, and then I've scored when it fell off, I think.
Did you put it back on?
So yeah, I should have really ended it without it. Because, but then I think the game it was getting a bit nervy, and then Stevie then started giving us that drive and everything, because at 1-0 I think if we conceded then we maybe wouldn't have qualified. I'm not too sure, but for some reason that game sticks out with me, and then he scores late on, and then we're qualified.
What is it about certain games where like you see a player take it by the scruff of the neck? It almost feels like all the other players on the pitch are like, just give him the ball, he's going to do something about it. Do you lot feel that as players as well when you're on the pitch? It's
just a determination that you don't want to lose. And I had it with Everton in the FA Cup final, and then Crystal Palace in the FA Cup final, where we were struggling a little bit. And I was going into positions and doing things I shouldn't have really been doing, but you do it because you feel like you have to, and that helped us drive on and win the game and then win the FA Cup. So yeah, there's moments in games where you see play and you think they're going a bit all the times, but they're actually going to take the game away from the opposition.
Okay, we've done complete midfielder, but we're going to ask you now for the final category, the genius. Who was the one that could kind of, I don't know whether it's sensing, you've already mentioned sensing when a game needed something, but maybe that could just pull out a bit of magic out of nothing. Maybe a David Beckham or even a Joe Cole. He came up briefly earlier.
Joe. I think Joe had elements of that, didn't he? With just how skillful he was, and he was effective in the final third and could create, could score goals. Beck's again, not so much a genius, if you like. That I always think genius is someone who can do things which no one else can do.
Forget the people that you played with for a second. If you're talking about genius, what's your prime example of a genius?
Well, you're looking at Messi, Maradona.
Okay.
I think George Best. You look at Ronaldo. You're looking at this type of player. So for me, the one who in Premier League history, I'd have to say, is Giggsy.
Gigggs?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
That he's the one who could do things which no one else could do in training, still at old age.
What kind of thing? Have you got any examples of moments where he used that genius?
Yeah, well, he used to sick the goalkeepers all the time when he'd go to cross it and he'd score near post past him, had no luck. So he'd be looking this way and score this way. How he could still manipulate the ball in the time I played with him, and wiggle out to tight areas, just through passes, finish. He could take free kicks,
and the longevity of it as well.
And he's won 13 league titles.
yeah.
Which is incredible. So as we spoke before, I think because the last 10 years of his career, he adapted. When I first signed for Man United, he was getting booed, Giggsy, by the United fans.
Yeah, remember that, yeah.
I think there was talk about him going to Inter Milan. And then he adjusted his game. I'm only actually talking about this part of his career, where when you actually look at the first part of the first half of his career, what he done in terms of the goals he scored and the importance of goals. And
because a lot of other players, if they'd have lost that yard of pace, that would have been them done, right?
Yeah.
Whereas he went into a new position and was able to almost dictate play from there.
Okay, let's pick out your ultimate midfield then, and you can do this in whatever formation you like.
Well,
it's going to be a 3-man midfield.
Yeah, I'll have to put 3 in there. In the 3 in midfield, I'd go.
If you do Scholes, Lampard, Gerrard, it's going to be hilarious to me.
No, I'd go Scholes, Carrick, and Gerrard.
Wow.
You happy with that, Kay?
Do you know what? I feel like if that was the England midfield, we'd have probably won some stuff.
Let's not open that debate again.
I was going to go Lampard instead of Carrick, but just having the balance of it, Stevie could be the one to go forward and having it gives you better balance. So that's why I go that team.
Okay, that's where we'll leave it. Thank you as always for watching The Wayne Rooney Show. You can watch us every week on the iPlayer or on the BBC Sport YouTube, or you can listen on BBC Sounds. I'll see you next time.